Greetings and welcome to another episode of Two Ball Guys. My name is Eric Giordano and I am the Executive Director at the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, also known as WIPS, and I am joined by my co-host, Dave Anderson. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Eric. And yes, my name is Dave Anderson. I'm a Senior Policy Fellow here at WIPS, and we have a great show lined up for you today with some special guests who will be discussing in-depth a project on one of the city's efforts to proactively shine a light on its community policing. For those not familiar with WIPS, we're a unit of the University of Wisconsin system founded in 2007 with a mission to educate and engage citizens, develop future leaders, and bring the resources of the university to address community identified needs.
Thanks, Dave. And you know, despite all of the cold and snow here in Wisconsin, I just want you to know, in particular, Dave, that it really warms my heart each week that we get to spend a little time together. You know, it sort of makes me wax a little nostalgic. And speaking of wax, Dave, you probably didn't know that I was a big Pinterest fan back in the day. And I once saw a post with these words of wisdom that I wanted to share with you. It goes like this: taking the road less waxed can be a little hairy. So Dave, when I see both of us together on the screen, it's just comforting to realize that we have both chosen the smoother path.
Well, Eric, indeed we have. And since you subjected us to your humor yet once again on this week's show, I feel compelled to reciprocate. But I want to tell you that I was talking to my grandson earlier this week. And he said to me, "Grandpa, I hear that you like hair jokes," to which I responded, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, have you heard this one?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. You'll have to tell me what it is." He said, "Well, do you know where sheep go to get their hair cut?" Do you know the answer to this one, Eric?
No, and I don't think I want to.
Do you know where sheep go to get their hair cut? They go to the Baba shop, the Baba shop.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do get it. And I guess the reality is, Dave, that there's no end to the suffering that our viewers must endure every Friday to get through your jokes. But speaking of viewers, if you have any words of wisdom, dear viewers, in the form of hair jokes or puns of your own, you can certainly send them to us by posting in the Facebook chat or an email at info@wips.org, info@wipps.org. And speaking of endless suffering, I want to give a shout out to our endless suffering producer, Luke Rudolph. He's incredible producer, marketing coordinator, chill hop DJ, and token representative of an attractive younger demographic. Thank you so much, Luke. We're glad to have you.
We really do appreciate everything Luke does for the show and contributes in a big way to the success that we've had. And I too want to say thanks to you, Luke, for everything you do for us. Well, Eric, I think it's time that we should get right to today's special topic, community-informed policing, with our special guests. Our guests today will be discussing a public process taking place in the city of Wausau that began with the creation of the Wausau Policing Task Force. Eric, I know WIPS has been involved with this, so you wanted to make sure our guests know that our organization has an interest and role, and I understand you have an important disclaimer that you want to share with our viewers here today as well.
Right. So thanks, Dave. Yes. So as we delve into this topic today, we're going to be hearing about the Wausau Policing Task Force that Dave mentioned, and we're having our special guest that we'll introduce in a moment. And I just want to make sure our viewers know that one of the things that we do, as we've mentioned previous on the show, is we have an arm of our organization called WIPS Research Partners, and we bring the resources of the university to apply to community needs. And this is one of those situations where the city of Wausau has contracted with WIPS to design and help carry out an information gathering process. So we don't really have any stake in the outcomes in terms of what the task force decides to do with the information, but our job is to ensure that we're providing a neutral, independent means of gathering information from the community members of Wausau. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today, but I just wanted our viewers to know that we are involved in that process, so there wasn't any question about that. So with that, thanks, Dave, and I look forward to hearing from our guests.
Great, thanks for that disclaimer, Eric. And I want to remind our viewers that if you have questions for any of our guests during today's show, please feel free to ask them in the Facebook chat, and they'll get to us so that we can put your questions forward. It gives me great pleasure to welcome two of our three guests immediately, and we'll welcome our third guest a little bit later. But first we have Ben Bliven, who's the Chief of Police for the City of Wausau, and Michael Klemp North, a Wausau resident and member of the Wausau Policing Task Force. Welcome to the two of you, and I'll say right from right out of the chute here that Mayor Rosenberg will be joining us in a few minutes as well. So welcome to the show, guys. We're glad to have you here, and we look forward to the conversation. So
thanks for having us.
Mike, I'm gonna start out asking you the first question. So the mayor asked you to serve on the task force. Tell us a little bit about who else is on the task force. And also, we'd like to get your perspective as a community member and resident of Wausau in terms of, what's the task force all about, and what are you hoping in terms of outcomes for the task force? Well, man, that's a loaded question. A lot of elements in that.
Yeah, it is. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this amazing opportunity for Wausau. So the easy one first, the people who are on the task force, the city council and the planning sort of divided it up. There's two representatives from the Police and Fire Commission, which is Michael Loy and William Harris. And then Pat Peckham sits on the task force representing the Wausau City Council. John Robinson, who has been involved in local government for years, is the chair, as with Sarah Schneck, Kaylee McCauley, and myself, and we represent the greater community. So you have sort of half of it are people who are actively involved in the day-to-day, and then some outsiders in a way, as well as then Chief Bliven and Mayor Rosenberg sit in with us. So that's the foundation of the group. I think in respect to the perspective, this is an opportunity for Wausau, and really we're taking initiative and being proactive when we are not responding to a local tragedy per se. We can all look through the headlines and watch the news and say, wow, there's some significant communication and transparency and relationship concerns between law enforcement and neighborhoods and cities. And in Wausau here, we're trying to take an opportunity to respond to these proactively, listen to people in an organized and open way. I'll tell you, I'm excited about it, but yet also realistic of what we're going to learn and hear from our listening sessions and the eventual survey. So like we can improve our community, and we can improve how perhaps the police force and other services within Wausau respond to crisis. I think it's important that where we're framing this as the Wausau Police Task Force, I think there's a greater picture when we think about how to support our law enforcement officers in the streets, give them tools so they can better respond, whether it's for mental health or whether it's training for them to understand the culture and the social stories. This is a bigger picture. It's not just what's the police force doing and what should they do differently. It's how can we as a community be better neighbors to each other and be respectful for the ideas and where we all come from. I mean, I'm reminded of, when I was thinking about this, when I thought about this, I was reminded when I was a kid growing up in Wausau, and we welcomed, those who needed to find a safe place from Southeast Asia. We welcomed them into our community in the late 1970s and the early 80s. And in a way, we were proactive then, just like we're being proactive today. And we're saying, how do we continue to welcome this? How do we continue to listen to where they are and their stories so we can honor that and be helpful for them to be safe with each other and with the greater community.
Great.
Well, kudos to you and the other members of the task force for stepping up and being willing to be a part of this process. And I agree with you. I think it's significant that Wausau is playing a proactive role in taking a look at these issues. I'm just going to ask a follow-up, Eric, to the chief to maybe provide some perspective from his point of view too, as to the role of the task force and some of the things that maybe you'd like to see come out of this process.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, Mayor Rosenberg and I had a number of conversations in the aftermath of George Floyd's death around law enforcement, public perception of law enforcement, and how our community members felt about law enforcement. And this was kind of the result of those discussions. I'm sure she had many discussions with many other people besides me. But from a police perspective, our mission here is to partner with our community to enhance the quality of life. And every day we get to come to work and we get called to people's homes, to people's businesses, out into our community to help people in some of their worst moments. And so we have a great opportunity to impact people's lives, but that opportunity for us to impact people's lives is lessened if people don't trust and support the police department. So this is an opportunity for us to be transparent in our current procedures and policies, and be transparent about who we are as an organization, and to hopefully build trust. And it's an opportunity for us to figure out ways that we can get better, because I think we're a great organization. We do a lot of really good things, but certainly we have opportunity and room for improvement. Every organization does, and this task force gives us that opportunity.
Great.
Thanks, Chief, and welcome, Mayor Rosenberg. Thanks for being here.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
No problem. We told the viewers you'd be late, and so we're all waiting and patiently, and now we're rewarded. We appreciate it. So we're going to go right to you, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So can you tell us a little bit about why you created the Wausau Policing Task Force? What motivated you to get this task force off the ground, and what are you hoping it's going to accomplish?
Yeah, I think the first thing that motivated me was, we had the largest political demonstration in my lifetime in June. I was involved in it. The chief was involved in it. It was the Black Lives Matter George Floyd March. And almost 2,000 people showed up to have their voices heard in this way. And, as I'm looking around and thinking about what does this mean for Wasa, and what does this mean for what are people saying? I thought, we can't just end it with a march, right? We have action that we need to take. What does that look like? We looked around to what other communities were doing. Of course, there were several communities that kind of had that snap judgment to defund the police and other things like that. And that's not really my style. And I don't think that's Wasa's style. We have broad support for our police, and people really do enjoy the community policing that we have. So I thought, well, what can help people understand what we're doing here? If you go into the chief's office, you can't see it behind him, but on the wall, it has the police mission, and it talks about that drive for excellence. And so I think this policing task force is doing just that. It's helping both uncover the excellence that we already have, but also drive to improve. Every professional athlete, every person at the top of their game, they're working to improve every day. So that's what we're doing here. Our mission that we have here is to provide that community-led kind of public safety recommendations from the public. So that's what we're doing here. That's what kind of started it. I want it to be very thoughtful. I don't want to make snap judgments about things. I want to make sure that we're really thinking through things. So super pumped that WIPS is involved, because I know you're nothing if not thoughtful and helpful. So thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure. And we try not to ask gotcha questions on this show, so this isn't an attempt at a gotcha, but I think it's a serious thing that I've personally heard from some people in the community, that they're worried that this process is political in nature, that really there was some political agenda that's driving it. So how do you respond to people who feel that way, or who have those concerns?
Yeah, I think that's a fair concern, right? I mean, we see politics all the time driving public policy, and sometimes you end up with something that's acceptable, and a lot of times you don't. So this process, I specifically wanted to remove from that emotional gut reaction that some people have. So I think what I would invite people to do is be involved in this. We're having public meetings, we are having listening sessions, we are having surveys. So I think this is an opportunity for the community to be more involved. And if you're concerned that it's political, let me know about it. I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear your experiences with police.
Great, thank you.
So and Mayor Mike did a really good job talking about the composition of the task force and kind of the mission and really set the stage well. And you've just touched on it as well, that the task force is embarking on a pretty broad and deep public listening process. I guess this maybe would be a question for all of you, but I'll start with you, Mayor. Tell us specifically how the task force is providing opportunities to listen to the people who live, work, and shop in your city, and how will that information be used as we look to the future? So.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting process because, we could just send out a survey and ask everyone what they think. But we wanted to be really thoughtful because at the end of this, we do want to have policy recommendations. So obviously, the first opportunity is come to a meeting. You're always welcome to come to our meeting. They're open to the public. You can voice your concerns, questions, any of that. But this process that we're embarking on this month is listening sessions. So we'll have, I think, 7 of them. Where we're both virtual and in person. So you can come in person, let us know what you think, come on the Zoom, all of that. If we're all comfortable here, we have survey or questionnaire, I think we're calling it. And we have opportunities to leave messages. We want to make it both the opportunity for people to be anonymous if that's what they want to be, or if they want to just put their face to this. But that's really what this is all about. It's about getting information from the public. I don't have a history in making policing policy, and I need input from what people in our community need.
Great. Any additional thoughts, Chief or Mike?
No, the mayor knocked it out of the park on that one.
The only thing I would add is that we are trying to open it with using, we have a diverse community and we have multiple languages and things. And so we've really tried to create opportunities so people can be comfortable sharing their stories in their language that they are familiar with. And so there are opportunities for non-English speakers as well as for those who speak English.
Thanks. And maybe this is a great opportunity to mention that you can find more information by going to wipps.org/WPD. And I'm hoping, Luke, that you'll put that up on the Facebook so that people can see that. And all the information about those listening sessions and other means of communicating will be posted there. So I guess, thinking through this a little bit, I'm kind of curious, Ben, to go back to our Chief Bliven, sorry, to go back to one thing that, I wanted to mention that, first of all, you're one of the few return guests that we've had on this show. So we really appreciate that. We wanted you to know that. And I think that means there's something pretty special about you. If you'd shave your head, I think we'd love you even more, but that's really up to you. But the last time you were on Two Ball Guys, you said something like this, and I'm paraphrasing. I'll go to my grave believing that the Wausau Police Department is an excellent organization made up of highly dedicated people who are doing an outstanding job of serving the people of Wausau. And I will go to my grave believing that there is always room for improvement. Did I get that roughly right? And if I did, can you tell us a little more about what you meant by both parts of that statement?
Sure. So I get a little emotional when I talk about this, but I've been a police officer since 1998, so going on 23 years now, and I'm extremely proud of my profession. I think there's a lot of good work that gets done across our country by police officers on a daily basis. I've been involved in our recruitment and hiring process here in Wausau for the last decade. We've hired more than 2/3 of our current police officers in the last 5 years. So we've had a lot of turnover, but I've been intimately involved in that recruitment and in the selection process. So I've interviewed all of the officers that we've hired in the last decade many times. We do about half a dozen interviews every hiring process. I've read the psychological examination reports. I've read the polygraph examination reports. I've reviewed the 30-page background packets. I've reviewed the background report from our background investigators on all of these officers. And that's before they even get to step in the door. And then I get to know them because they work with us. I know their families. I know what they do in their off time. I know the kind of people they are. And I have great confidence in their that their heart is in the right place. They are here to serve our community, and they do so on a daily basis very, very well. We have an awards banquet annually. That'll be coming up soon. It'll be more virtual this year, but just in the last year, the awards that we'll be giving out are remarkable, literally life-saving awards. We have people who have committed their lives to, learning in their career about crisis intervention and working with individuals who are mentally ill. We have officers who are committed to working with our homeless population. We have officers that are experts in responding to sexual assault and domestic violence in our community, and have made tremendous progress, not just in individual lives, but in building relationships across organizations within our community, so our community are better, have a better response to those issues. We're an accredited law enforcement agency, so I could go on and on, but I mean, you see the background of what I'm referencing when I say we are a great organization and we have great pride in what we do. I see the joy in our officers when they help people. I see the tears that stream down their face in ridiculously difficult situations. So that's me saying that you will never convince me that we don't have an organization full of people who want to make individual lives better in our community and to make our community better. But that doesn't mean that we can't get better. Our vision is to be regarded as the standard of excellence in policing, and so we need to continue to get incrementally better. We want to be a transparent organization that people believe in our community, and we want people to trust us. So we have to go about our work in a certain way. And this task force gives us an opportunity to get that feedback from our community, which isn't going to be 100% positive. I'm very certain of that. We aren't perfect people. Sometimes people don't understand, why law enforcement goes about work in the way that we do. But we have an opportunity to build trust. We have an opportunity to listen and to take input from this task force and make our organization better. So that's what I mean by those statements, that, I think we do a lot of things very well, but we have room for improvement. There's no doubt about it.
I really appreciate that, Chief. Really, really thoughtful. Thank you. This next question is kind of for all of you. I was on the phone this morning, I was mentioning to you earlier, with the executive director of the Hmong American Association in town, and with one of the clan leaders, President Zhang. And one of the things that they were concerned about, and especially if you think about vulnerable populations in our community, and perhaps the Hmong population is one of those, there were some concerns. How do we reassure, and how can you reassure members of the Hmong community, or members of the Spanish-speaking community, or any vulnerable populations that may have some things to say that aren't as flattering, that you actually do welcome what they have to say, and that there won't be any retribution if they do share experiences that maybe aren't necessarily flattering?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll just start on that. It's so important that people feel confident that they can give honest and critical feedback if they need to. I don't know how else to say this. Like, they have my word that we won't be, engaging in any retribution. And I'm sure that the chief is going to say the same thing. But I really want people to feel that they're in a safe place, that they can share what they need to share. And, that's why we actually have set up these meetings in such a way to make it less intimidating for people. If they want to, you won't see a uniformed officer there because they won't be there. And so you can share in that space, and we'll be taking your feedback and sharing it with the task force.
Yeah, I think, Mayor, you said it really well about, we were very intentional in our discussions, and I was part of those discussions about, me, myself not being in these listening sessions and not having uniformed officer presence in the listening sessions, because we want people to feel comfortable that, they can speak freely and speak their mind. And we didn't want to have any concern about what the police response might be. But yes, absolutely we understand that people have certain opinions about law enforcement, and we want them to be able to speak freely about that, because we can learn from what they're saying and what their experiences are. And furthermore, I would say that if anybody does experience any retribution, then they should bring that to me, and we will take action on that. So.
Thank you so much, both of you. Mike, a little bit following up on that. What if I'm a resident or a person who visits Wasa and I just feel like I want to be anonymous with my comments? Do I have a means to do that?
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because I think, we all have, it's hard for all of us when we have something that is sensitive and emotional to us, at times to talk in a public forum. And whether it's because we are afraid of retribution, whether it's because we just, there's emotions sometimes prevent us from being able, to say things. And so we have set up phone numbers that people can call. There's email that they can use, and it allows them to take the time. And if they want to script it out and just read from a script or write a letter, the goal for this all is that we can't get too much information. We want the good stories. We want I know we have a police force and they do okay. I've never interacted with them. Thanks. That's also helpful because it shares with us that people are engaged. And we also want those that have struggled. And it's not going to come, like Chief Bliven said, it's not going to come back at them. We're trying to make it better. And there are things that we won't understand. I won't, Chief Bliven, Mayor Rosenberg, and myself, others might not understand what that moment, that time felt to them unless we know about it. And that's the key part of this, is to learn those.
Thank you. Very well said. And I think it's also important to point out there is an anonymous questionnaire that the mayor mentioned that you can also access that can keep your identity private. Dave, I'm going to pass the baton back to you about a similar question on the flip side, though.
Yeah, on the flip side, if the three of you wouldn't mind, give us your best pitch as to why people who are worried about this process, those who fear that it's just going to be a giant gripe session against the police, why should they also participate?
For the last 300 or so days, there's been kind of a worldwide community gripe session. So I'm not nervous about what to expect. Some of that does just need to get out so you can get at what you need to hear, right? So there might be some of that, but you should participate, because if you love the interactions you've had, and I have a lady who writes to me, almost monthly, and she talks to me about how much she loves the police. She had a really great interaction with them and they saved her life. And so, I hear from her monthly because she wants to make sure I don't forget. So I think, I want to hear from everybody here, and, you are going to hear some people griping. That's part of the job too. I think we all recognize that.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that a little bit. I think that, like I mentioned earlier, I think we do a lot of really good things, and I think that's really important for our task force to hear about. And so I implore you, if you have if you've had great experiences with our police department, please let the task force know. Speak up and let that be heard, because I think that there are a lot of people. I know for a fact there are a lot of people that have had great experiences, and that's an important component of this discussion.
I can just jump in really quick and say, as a representative of the group that's helping to collect and collate the data, at least from the early comments I've received, there are many, many positive comments. And so I just want everyone to know we are receiving those and excited for those comments as well. So
can I add just one more thing to that too? And that is, a discussion point that I think I've hit a lot of times in various conversations about the task force, and that is that every community is different. Every police department is different. So, it's important for our community to have a discussion about the Wausau Police Department. That's what this task force is charged with: evaluating, assessing, and making recommendations for. And, it's hard to see something that goes on in Minneapolis or Milwaukee and make the assessment that that's how law enforcement behaves in Wausau, because that isn't necessarily true. We have different policies and procedures. We have a different chief, a different mayor, different city council. We have a different culture in our communities. So, it's just really important that we hear about what is happening here in Wausau. What are your expectations about the Wausau Police Department? And what have been your experiences and what are your thoughts for improvement?
Eric, Luke is telling us that we have a viewer question that I'd like to throw out to the group. And that question is, was there a spark that resulted in the creation of the task force? Or is this an idea that's been in the works for quite some time, maybe even over a period of years?
I think the spark probably was that large political demonstration, George Floyd. That was the spark. But what happens with sparks, you got to figure out what to do with it then. So coming from the county board world, when there's a complex question that you want to find an answer to and the right policy discussion about it, task force. So if there's anything I've done around here, it's task forces. So I thought it was really important that we explored this very thoughtfully and thoroughly. So.
And Eric, I think we got time maybe for one more question here. I'd like to ask the mayor just to follow up on something she said earlier. You mentioned you've had some conversations with your counterparts elsewhere in the state, specifically about this initiative here in the city of Wausau. How are they reacting to what we're doing here? And are there other things, to your knowledge, that are going on like this elsewhere? I'd be curious to see what kind of feedback you're getting from your counterparts.
Yeah, I've had some good discussions about this process. I actually had a couple of people who were running for mayor in the last election cycle in other places who were asking about it because they wanted to do this kind of a process. They wanted that inquiry, but they didn't want to spark that, guttural kind of reaction when you talk about, like, defund the police is just not a helpful place to start, right? And that's not where we're starting. We're starting from, what does our community need? So one of the things that I have heard from other mayors across the country, they have kind of moved forward with that snap judgment of defunding, and some of them might have been recalled. Some of them have had some real critical mass, and now they're actually facing those real tough policy questions because, as the chief was talking about earlier, police aren't just out there, catching speeders or whatever it is. They are out there. Our police are dealing with the people who are in mental crisis. They are dealing with the homeless population. They're dealing with these issues that are complex. And when people don't know what to do, they call 911 and they say, help me deal with this person. I don't know how to help. And so the police have learned over the years, like, this is part of my job. And so you do end up with these kind of ramifications that are not helpful. So that's kind of what I'm seeing across the board. And I just, again, want to be very thoughtful because this is important. It's personal, and it affects how we deliver services across the board for our city.
Thank you. We want to be respectful of your time, but all of a sudden we have a couple of audience questions. My question is, do you guys have a minute or two to respond? Okay. The first question, Ben, this might be directed to you, but are there plans in the works, or maybe you can talk a little about what you've already done in this space for the Wausau Police Department to get to know the people of Wausau's neighborhoods? And some examples they cite are bike patrols, foot patrols, and getting to know people individually.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that is really, really important, and it's a core component of community policing, which we've strived to do for at least the last 15 years. And so I would say we want to know every single person that lives in the city, all 40,000 of you. We want to know you on an individual basis and know what your needs and what your needs are and what your concerns about the community are. But we are a department of 79 people, so it's going to be really hard for us to know each and every citizen here. But that doesn't mean that we're not interested. First, I would say that I will give any community member my time. If they call and they want to talk about law enforcement in our community, I will give you my time and I will meet with you and we'll talk about whatever issues are on your mind. We have 10 neighborhood groups in the city of Wausau. They've kind of been put on hold with COVID, but we have a lot of neighborhood groups that meet monthly. We have officers that are assigned to every one of those meetings. So, 120 meetings a year across the city. We have police officers giving information, answering questions, building relationships with citizens in our community. We have officers assigned to bike patrols, foot patrols in our downtown area. That's a really important thing. We have done a lot of things like coffee with the cop to, encourage people to come and talk to us about issues that are going on in the community. We have an annual event that we didn't hold in 2020 because of COVID. That's a community thank you. And that's an event we've put on each of the last 4 years, save for 2020, so that we can invite the community down to the 400 block. We cook you lunch. We will bring out all of our equipment. We'll talk about the variety of things we do. We'll listen to hear what's going on in the community. And from your perspective, we have a Citizens Academy we run twice a year. So you can come and meet with us once a week and hear about all of the different issues and departments that we have within Wausau PD. So that's just a hint of what we do already in terms of building relationships with our community. And another thing that we work a lot on is our social media. We've been recognized around the state and country for the social media work that we do. And that's what I call digital citizen engagement or digital community policing. It's a really important way for us to reach out to the community and for them to see who we are as an organization. And we get a lot of input in terms of Facebook comments, private messages from citizens about things that are going on. So we want to know each and every one of you. If you have thoughts, questions, concerns, please call me. I'll talk with you on the phone. I'll meet with you in person, or get you with somebody that can help resolve some of the neighborhood issues that are going on and that sort of thing. So it's a really critical piece of what we do here.
If
Mike,
I can step in.
Yeah.
So I come from a couple different backgrounds, and one is that I teach law enforcement officers throughout the country in graduate programs as part of my teaching. And I will say that when I listen to the scenarios and we do a lot of problem-based learning and scenario learning, Wasa is really engaged. And when you compare, when you think about the multiple different programs that the police department's done and Chief Bliven and others have instituted, we are very involved. They are very involved, face-to-face type agency. And I think one of the ways that you see this is when you receive comments and when you receive the community coming back in positive ways as well as concerning ways. It shows that there is a presence and that there is interaction and it's welcomed. So I think kudos to the police department and Chief Bliven that in comparison, I would think that Wasa is above average about their ability and their ways they engage the public.
Another quick question here, but I think it's an important one, so I wanted to sneak it in here if we can, is somebody's asking about how do you ensure equitable representation of community on the task force? Now, I know the water's under the bridge a little bit, the task force already set, but did some thought go into that representation, and is it equitable?
Yeah, that was really important to me. Of course, like I thought about, do I just go out into the community and handpick people to be a part of this? And, I don't know what the right answer is for that. But we pushed out a new process for appointing people, and it's a citizen engagement form. So people can actually apply to be a part of any committee process of the city. So I pushed people to apply, as many people as possible, and we had a ton. We had a ton of applications. And so then, we kind of thoughtfully looked at what people were saying about their backgrounds and why they were interested. And so, we have Supervisor Will Harris, who is on our Police and Fire Commission, but he's also a lawyer with Judicare. So it's really helpful, like, that he understands the justice system in that way. We have Kaylee McCauley, who is young, involved in mental health care. Super important to have that viewpoint. She organized the Black Lives Matter March. We have John Robinson, who's pretty much done everything I think that you can possibly do around here, except maybe run for Congress. So he has got this really good and robust background to kind of help keep us on track and keep us going towards those policy goals. Now, we obviously didn't hit every demographic with our, 7-person task force. So I think that's where these listening sessions, where these kind of strategic listening sessions will come in. It's really important that if the members of this body aren't a part of a community maybe that's more marginalized or has different kind of interactions with law enforcement and the justice system, that we do hear from them. I want our committee to understand, what are you going through? What do you feel? What do you need? So we tried to kind of cover it on the front end with, just kind of looking at how we can engage the broadest possible community, but then also on this end where we're engaging population specifically.
Yeah, wow. I really appreciate this. I feel like we could go on for another hour. Really appreciate it, all of you. I will say this. I think it's worth mentioning because of that last question that really thanks to the police chief. I got to give police Chief Bliven rather a lot of credit. Wondering, do we need a special listening session for Black, Indigenous, and people of color? And we were talking a lot about that. Do we make people feel singled out because they happen to be people of color, or do we, make a deliberate attempt to create a safe space for people who identify that way? And Chief was very proactive about saying we need that session, and we have that session. So I really do think that equity has been very carefully considered. We're even in discussion about how do we get people who've been arrested and ex-jail populations to participate as well. So I can just say from an organizational standpoint, the group who's sort of helping to organize the listening, we are doing our best to be as equitable as possible. But thank you all, Mayor Rosenberg, Chief Bliven, Citizen Mike, Teacher and Professor Mike. Thanks so much for taking time to share with us this unique community-centered approach to addressing policing in the city of Wausau. For more information about this effort, you can visit, as I mentioned earlier, wipps.org/WPD, which Luke has posted in the Facebook, on Facebook rather. And so unfortunately, though, because of the time that we've taken, we have run out of time for our good friend, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who hopefully can join us next week. So thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you soon on Two Ball Guys.
And I'd like to add my thanks too. And, I said it at the outset of the program that kudos to all of you for leading this very forward-thinking process. And I want to conclude by saying that again, because I think you've really created, you're establishing Wausau as a leader here in the state, maybe even in the nation. So thank you for your efforts along these lines, and what a great show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Mike, I hope you're up for a guest appearance in the future. If one of us has to go, can you fill in guest for a host for us rather?
I need suggestions on waxing. I just, what do you guys use? That's, once you give me those things, then I think I might, and it looks like I got to grow this out too. So, but I think we can meet aside, and I could.
Well, we appreciate that, but we're not going to reveal any of our secrets in public. So we'll share that with you privately. All right, everybody.
I've been invited for a third time back. I've got a great story about nair on a person's head. So it's only for the next time though. I can't say it right
Oh
now.
boy.
Wow.
Third time. Then you get a special star.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.